The group chat buzzed on my phone for the seventh time that morning. Photos of airline tickets, excitement over beach outfits, messages filled with emojis and exclamation marks from my mother, my brother Daniel, his wife, my cousin Laura, and even Uncle Jeff. Everyone was clearly thrilled about the upcoming family holiday. Everyone except me. I scrolled through the messages in silence, rereading one in particular. Anna, can you send your flight details so we can coordinate airport pickups? I hadn't received any information about where we were staying. No address, no booking, no room assignment. So I texted Mom directly. Hey, just double checking. Did someone already book a place for me too? Her response came 5 minutes later. Oh, completely forgot. Everything's full now. Maybe you can find something nearby? Sorry, sweetie. No explanation, no apology. Just an oops. As if this kind of thing hadn't been happening since I was 14. I stared at the message for a long moment, heart pounding, a mix of disbelief and a sickeningly familiar sting in my chest. They'd done it again. Forgotten. Or at least pretended to. You see, in my family, I was always the afterthought. The extra chair at the table, the one they forgot to include in group photos, the one whose birthday always fell through the cracks of their busy schedules, the one who didn't quite fit the mold. Daniel was the golden child. Business school, 2 kids, family man, successful in the traditional way. Laura was the fun cousin who was always loud, always included, always seen. And I was Anna, single, quiet, ambitious in ways they didn't understand. I built a small but thriving interior design studio over 10 years. I traveled, worked with clients all over Europe, and had just finished a project for one of the most well-known luxury hotels in Spain. But none of that seemed to register with my family. You should really think about getting a stable job, my mother had said during our last holiday. Your work sounds more like a hobby, Laura added, sipping from her Aperol spritz. I had nodded politely, smiled even, but deep down it chipped away at me. This time, though, I wasn't going to cry in the bathroom or cancel the trip in quiet humiliation. I was going to do something else. I opened my laptop, still staring at the group chat buzzing with excitement about their mid-range seaside apartments. I clicked open a different browser tab and typed 3 simple words: Ibiza Luxury Villas. The family holiday was supposed to be a budget-friendly 5-day trip to celebrate my mother's birthday. A cozy group vacation, she'd said. But now they had booked every apartment in the small complex and conveniently left me out. There it was. Villa Azul, 7 bedrooms, infinity pool, ocean view, private chef, staff 24/7, 18,000 euros for 5 days. A pause, then a smile. Perfect. I didn't hesitate. I booked it. And just for fun, I scheduled the Rolls-Royce Ghost I'd just added to my design business portfolio as a rental property investment, my latest venture. I forwarded the confirmation to my assistant with a note. Please make sure the villa is pre-stocked with my mother's favorite wine. Label everything for Miss Anna. I want it to be unforgettable. Because if there's one thing I've learned from being treated like an afterthought your whole life, it's that silence isn't always strength. Sometimes silence is strategy. 2 days later, while they continued planning group activities without me, I quietly confirmed every last detail. The airport pickup, the villa staff uniforms, the engraved welcome note in every room. My assistant texted back, "Everything is arranged. Shall I have the villa manager notify the main resort when you arrive?" I replied, "No. Let's keep it a surprise. I want to see their faces." And I meant it. Because for 31 years, I had waited for someone in that family to really see me. In 3 days, they finally would. And they wouldn't forget again. The wheels of the Rolls-Royce crunched softly over the gravel driveway of the villa. Morning sunlight sparkled on the Mediterranean waves just beyond the glass fence, and the scent of saltwater and jasmine filled the air. I stepped out of the car in silence, my white linen jumpsuit catching the breeze, sunglasses reflecting the stretch of coastline behind me. "Welcome to Villa Azul, Miss Anna," the villa manager said, bowing slightly. "Everything is prepared exactly as requested." "Thank you," I replied, my voice calm and controlled. From the villa's elevated terrace, I could see the cluster of small vacation apartments where my family was staying just down the hill. They looked cheerful, cozy, average. And I was home. As the staff unloaded my luggage, I glanced down toward the apartment complex. A group was gathering by the pool. Daniel, Laura, my mom, and several others. Loud laughter echoed faintly up the hill. I could tell the moment someone noticed the Rolls Royce. Heads turned. Laura's sunglasses came off. Daniel stopped mid-conversation. My mom shaded her eyes with one hand. I walked inside without looking back. The villa was stunning. White marble floors, floor-to-ceiling glass walls, a gourmet kitchen with fresh fruit and champagne already chilled. On the massive dining table, the framed photo of Mom from her 50th birthday party, just as I'd requested, surrounded by her favorite flowers. The same Mom who had texted completely forgot as if I were some distant cousin, not her daughter. I stood for a moment staring at the photo. Then I walked over, picked it up, and moved it. It didn't belong at the center anymore. Not today. I gave them an hour. An hour to wonder. An hour to sweat. An hour to realize that the girl they thought they had dismissed, left behind, forgotten, had just arrived in a way they never expected. At exactly noon, I descended the path toward the pool where they were gathered. The sound of clinking glasses and shallow conversation drifted up, but it all stopped when I rounded the corner. I took off my sunglasses and smiled. "Hey, everyone." There was a beat of stunned silence. My mother blinked rapidly. Daniel actually did a double take. Laura's jaw dropped, frozen mid-sip from her mimosa. "Anna?" my mother asked, as if she weren't sure whether to believe her own eyes. "Of course it's Anna," Daniel muttered, recovering. "She just arrived in a freaking Rolls Royce." "I thought everything was full?" Laura asked, turning to Mom. Mom stammered. I thought you weren't coming." "I managed to find something nearby," I said smoothly. "Last minute. Lucky, huh?" "Where are you staying?" Daniel asked. I pointed upward. "Villa Azul." Daniel blinked. "That villa? The one with the private chef and the infinity pool?" Laura added. "Yes," I said, brushing invisible dust from my wrist. "That one." There was another moment of silence, the kind that stretches uncomfortably, held together by 1,000 unspoken things. Guilt, confusion, pride. "Well," Mom finally said, forcing a smile. "I'm glad you made it. We thought you'd be upset." "Why would I be upset?" I asked, looking directly at her. "It's just a family holiday. You said you forgot." Laura tried to break the tension. "Well, maybe we can all come see your place later. It sounds amazing." "I'm sure you'll see plenty of it," I said casually. "I've arranged a birthday dinner there tomorrow night. Everything's catered. Chef Julian's flying in from Barcelona." Mom blinked. "You arranged dinner? At your place?" I smiled wider. "Of course, it's your birthday. I wanted to make it special." Truthfully, it had nothing to do with making it special. It had everything to do with being seen. I had spent too many years watching Daniel's endless promotions being celebrated, Laura's new condos admired, everyone else's milestones paraded around like trophies. Meanwhile, my successes were footnotes, if they were acknowledged at all. "Anna," Mom said, her tone gentler now. "You didn't need to do all that." "Maybe I did," I said quietly. "Maybe it was time." Back at the villa, I stood on the terrace with a glass of champagne, watching the sun begin its slow descent into the ocean. Down below, I could still see my family at the pool. All their laughter had quieted. They looked up at the villa more than once. I didn't wave. I didn't need to. The message was already delivered. And tomorrow, the real dinner would begin. With the wine, with the speeches, and with the truth. The next evening, just before sunset, Villa Azul shimmered in candlelight. Golden lanterns floated above the infinity pool, casting warm reflections across the still water. Tables were set beneath the pergola, draped in white linen and lined with crystal, gold flatware, and personalized name cards, each printed in calligraphy. A soft breeze carried the scent of rosemary, grilled sea bass, and Mom's favorite dessert, lemon olive oil cake. The birthday dinner was ready. I stood near the entrance in a tailored silk dress, watching the staff make final adjustments. Behind me, the soft hum of a string quartet filled the air. The entire setup was elegant, intentional, sharp. I wanted it to feel like something they'd remember, because this dinner wasn't just a celebration, it was a statement. The Rolls-Royces arrived in sequence, just as I planned. The same luxury fleet they had watched me step out of 2 days before. Now, they were stepping into my world. Mom stepped out first, in her favorite navy gown, one she'd worn for Daniel's company award gala last year. Dad followed, stiff in his linen jacket, glancing around the villa like he was still trying to piece it all together. Daniel and his wife clutched hands, their faces blank but alert. Laura, as always, looked effortlessly composed until she saw the cake display. "Is that flown in from Giacomo's in Milan?" she whispered. I smiled. Chef Julian made it himself. Silence again. Surprise. Discomfort. A hint of awe. They were used to being the center of the story. Tonight they were just guests. As everyone took their seats, the mood slowly shifted. The champagne softened their edges. The food amazed them. I watched the tension unwind, replaced by curiosity. Mom turned to me, tone light and curious. "This place is just beyond anything I imagined. Really, Anna? I had no idea." "Most people didn't," I said, sipping my wine. "You've done well," Dad added, a bit gruff, like it pained him to say it. "Very well." "I'm glad you think so," I replied calmly. "It's been a long journey." By the time dessert arrived, I stood to speak. Everyone fell quiet. I looked around the table, at the faces that had smiled at each other for decades, often without seeing the one face that lingered just outside the frame. Mine. "I want to thank you all for coming tonight," I began, voice steady. "I know this trip was meant to be low-key, casual, but when I heard there wasn't room for me in the apartment bookings..." A ripple of discomfort moved across the table. I decided to make my own arrangements, something appropriate. A few half-laughs, nervous, unsure of the tone. Mom shifted uncomfortably. "Anna, we really didn't mean to exclude you. It was just..." "Forgotten, I know," I said, locking eyes with her. "It's okay. It's not the first time." That stung more than I let on, but I didn't let my voice crack. I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. "I used to think I had to earn a seat at this table by proving I was like the rest of you," I continued. "By taking a safer path, by downplaying my choices, by accepting being underestimated." A long silence. "But over the years, I built something. Quietly. While you were all comparing promotions, bonuses, new mortgages, and Teslas, I was building a business that now serves clients across 6 countries. I'm not saying this for applause," I added as Laura's eyes flicked away. "I'm saying this because I spent too long thinking your validation meant something I needed." I paused. "But I don't. Not anymore." Mom spoke first. Her voice was small. "Anna, we never wanted you to feel..." "I know," I interrupted. "You never wanted me to feel left out. You just forgot me again and again." The honesty landed like a thunderclap. Daniel looked down at his napkin. Laura sipped her water without meeting my eyes. Dad stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. I took a breath and softened. "But I forgive you. I really do. This dinner isn't about revenge. It's about rewriting the narrative. It's about finally stepping into the space I've always deserved to occupy." "Anna," Mom said, her voice trembling. "This is overwhelming." "It's not meant to be overwhelming," I replied gently. "It's meant to be seen." We ended the night with toasts and quiet conversation. Some avoided me. Others offered nervous compliments, but I didn't mind. I wasn't here for applause. I was here for closure. And maybe, for the first time in my life, I'd finally found it. Tomorrow I'd show them more. The studio, the clients. The Forbes mentioned they'd never noticed. But for tonight, I let the silence speak. Because sometimes silence says, "I don't need your permission anymore." The next morning, the villa was quiet. A soft golden haze blanketed the ocean as the first rays of sun stretched across the horizon. I stood barefoot on the terrace with a cup of coffee, letting the silence settle into my bones. Last night had been intense and necessary. Today would be different. It was time for them to see, not just hear, what I had built. By mid-morning, the Rolls-Royces had arrived again, this time to bring everyone back to the villa for what I had titled the Vision Tour. I could tell from their expressions they didn't quite know what to expect. Mom looked nervous. Dad, guarded. Daniel whispered something to Laura, who shrugged but looked genuinely curious. I greeted them warmly. I hope you brought comfortable shoes. We'll be walking through 15 years of work today. We started in the great room, where I had set up a series of tall panels, each one featuring a different project from my firm. There were luxury hotels, boutique apartments, celebrity homes. I had included design sketches, final photos, and notes from high-profile clients who'd offered permission to be named. Their eyes moved slowly over the displays. I saw Daniel stop at the plaque from Condé Nast Traveler, listing my firm as one of the top 10 visionary design studios in Europe. Mom paused in front of a photo of my work featured in Architectural Digest, a space she had once called too modern when I showed her an early draft years ago. I had no idea, she whispered. No, I replied gently. You didn't ask. From there, we walked through the private studio wing of the villa, my real workspace. There, I kept physical models, mood boards, client prototypes, and timelines for upcoming projects. This is the expansion phase, I explained as we entered the long gallery room. In the past 3 years, I've opened branches in Paris, Lisbon, and New York. My work's now contracted through developers across 2 continents. Dad gave a low whistle. This is serious scale. Has been for a while, I said, walking to a large screen and turning it on. I've even been developing a software platform for real-time virtual interior staging. AI-enhanced, of course. Launching next spring. Daniel leaned forward. That's really advanced. Who's funding this? I am, I replied. He looked stunned. I guided them to a wall I'd saved for last. It held 4 simple frames. Each one contained an email or message from my family. Dismissive, belittling, or simply indifferent. One was a forwarded message from Laura. Let's not ask Anna to decorate the lake house. She does weird stuff. Another was from Dad. Maybe it's time you thought about something practical. And next to each one, a photo of the project that followed the message. The awards, the client testimonials, the revenue numbers. Silence fell. Mom stepped forward and touched the frame with her own message. We don't want to see you struggle anymore, sweetie. She turned to me, her eyes glistening. I thought I was helping. I know you did, I said. But it wasn't help. It was doubt, wrapped in concern. We moved into the media room where I had prepared a short film, just 5 minutes long. A visual timeline of my journey. Clips of me working in that tiny one-room studio in Lisbon. Snippets from client interviews, project unveilings, magazine covers, footage from when I was featured in a panel on design tech in Dubai. The final shot was a slow zoom out from my desk to reveal the entire global team I now employed. I looked around as the lights came back on. No one spoke for a moment. Then Daniel let out a long breath. You built a legacy, Anna. Finally the words I'd waited years to hear. Afterward, we walked back out into the sunlit courtyard. Mom took my hand. You weren't just making spaces beautiful, she said quietly. You were making space for yourself, for your dreams. I smiled. Exactly. That afternoon, the family returned to their rental apartments in silence, taking folders I had prepared for them. Portfolios, investment briefs, notes from early projects they had ignored or laughed off. I didn't expect them to say sorry. I didn't need them to. But I wanted them to walk away knowing that while they had underestimated me, I had never underestimated myself. Later that evening, I sat alone on the villa terrace as the sun dipped behind the cliffs, bathing the ocean in gold and rose. The soft hush of waves filled the silence, and I let the breeze calm my mind. The tour had gone exactly as planned, maybe even better. But I knew it wasn't over yet. Because when people are forced to see you differently, they either evolve or retreat into old patterns. My phone buzzed. A message from Sarah, my assistant back in Lisbon. Just a heads up. Mr. Graham, your father, is waiting at the villa entrance. Says he'd like to speak privately. Of course he did. I found him waiting near the edge of the garden, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the horizon like he was about to deliver a business pitch, not apologize to his daughter. Beautiful view, he said without turning. It is. He nodded slowly, then faced me. You've built something extraordinary, Anna. I'll admit that freely. I raised an eyebrow. Freely? He smiled faintly. Well, maybe not easily. You caught us off guard. That wasn't the plan, I replied. But the truth tends to do that. He looked at the villa behind me, the tall glass walls, the clean lines, the scent of lavender still lingering from the gardens. You've always been talented. I just never imagined it would scale like this. Because it didn't fit your definition of success, I said, sharper than I intended. He didn't deny it. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder, a formal-looking document with a Sullivan Holdings logo on the front. This is a proposal, he said. We'd like to explore a partnership. I took the folder, leafing through it quickly. Pages of projections, merge options, cross-promotional branding. You want to bring my design firm under your umbrella? I asked, staring at him. We think it would elevate both brands, he said carefully. You've clearly established market power, but with the backing of our firm, our network, you could scale even faster. We'd offer capital, infrastructure, access to corporate real estate clients. I held up a hand. You're pitching me like I'm on Shark Tank, Dad. He paused. I'm trying to make amends, in my way. My jaw clenched. Where was the support when I was designing apartments out of a €300 a month studio in Lisbon? When I showed you my first renders and you called them frivolous doodles? When I asked you to invest €5,000 and you told me, quote, that's not a bet I'd take on my own child? His face flushed slightly. That was a long time ago. Not to me. We stood in silence for a long moment. The breeze shifted. Dad? I said finally. Do you even like my work? He looked taken aback. What? My style. My philosophy. Do you believe in it? Or do you just believe in numbers now that I'm too big to fail? He opened his mouth, closed it. I'll be honest, I don't always understand it, but clearly others do. I smiled bitterly. There it is. I'm not looking to be absorbed, I said quietly. Not now. Not by the firm that spent years politely dismissing my entire vision. He nodded slowly. So it's a no. It's a not yet, I corrected. Maybe we can work together on a specific project, a collaboration, on my terms. He looked surprised, then thoughtful. That might work. And I'll send my lawyer the details of the licensing rights, I added. We do things transparently now. He chuckled, a little bitter, a little proud. You've become formidable. I had to be. He turned to leave but paused. You've always been smart, Anna. I see that now. I'm sorry it took this long. I didn't respond. I simply watched him walk away, across the stone path, past the lavender beds, back toward the world that once never had room for me. Later that night, I found a message from Daniel on my phone. Do you have a minute tomorrow? Just us? It didn't surprise me. The dynamic was shifting. One by one, they were beginning to realize the person they had underestimated now stood at the center of the story. And they were no longer sure where they fit in it. The final morning of the trip arrived with a calm breeze and a sky painted in pale pink and blue. I stood barefoot on the beach in front of the villa, letting the water rush over my toes. The sea had a way of clearing out the noise, grounding everything. In just a few hours, the family would board their flights back to their apartments, routines, and tightly knit group chats. But things wouldn't be quite the same anymore. Because they had seen me now. Not the version they had created. The quiet, artsy one always figuring things out. But me. The version that had never needed their permission. A soft knock came on the terrace door. I turned to see Daniel standing there, hands in his pockets, eyes unreadable. Walk with me? He asked. We strolled the edge of the water in silence for a minute. I owe you an apology, he said at last. I think I always believed I was protecting you when I doubted you. By dismissing me? I asked softly. He nodded. Yeah, that's what it was. I didn't understand your choices, so I minimized them. I thought that made me the responsible one. The mature one. You were the favorite, I said without bitterness. You played the part they wanted. And you didn't, he replied, which took more courage than I ever had. We stopped walking. The waves curled around our ankles. I saw your firm's numbers, he said. I researched everything after last night. What you've done, Anna. It's not just impressive. It's visionary. I met his gaze. Thank you. He hesitated. Would you ever let me invest? Privately? I'm not asking for favors, just... I believe in what you're building. This time, the surprise didn't sting. It warmed. I'll think about it, I said with a smile. Let's talk soon, in a different context. He nodded. We hugged. For the first time in years, it felt genuine. Back at the villa, the family gathered for one last breakfast. The staff had prepared a spread on the veranda. Pastries, fresh fruit, eggs, local cheeses. There was still some awkwardness in the air, but also softness. Laura avoided eye contact, but I noticed she'd changed the tone. No sarcastic quips, no condescension. Instead, she approached me with 2 mimosas. Truce? She asked, offering one. I took it. Your place is beautiful, she said. I get why you kept it quiet. We would have ruined it. I gave a half smile. Maybe? She nodded. You were right, you know. I loved playing the successful cousin, picking up the check. It made me feel like I mattered. That's on me. I get it, I said. I've done things for approval too, just in different ways. Laura glanced around. So, what happens now? I'm not going anywhere, I said. But I'm also not shrinking to make everyone else feel comfortable anymore. As they packed up to leave, I watched from the upper balcony. The Rolls Royces lined up again, luggage neatly loaded, conversations more careful than before. My parents walked toward the car together, slower than usual. Mom turned back one last time, eyes meeting mine. This time, there was no fake smile, just something softer. A quiet nod. I returned it. I didn't need anything else. Back inside, the villa fell silent. The candles were extinguished, the glasses cleared. The space returned to stillness, like it had been holding its breath all week. I walked through the rooms alone, barefoot, touching the marble countertops, the tall glass windows, the carefully curated art on the walls. All of it mine. All of it earned. I stopped by the last framed piece in my office, a copy of the email I had sent to my father 6 years ago, asking for a small investment. His response below, Anna, I just don't see how this scales. Maybe stick to freelancing for now. I smiled and tapped the frame. Thank you, I whispered. Because in the end, every doubt became fuel. Every rejection became clarity. As the sun set, I poured a glass of wine and stepped onto the terrace, barefoot once again. The wind was warm, and the air smelled like salt and lavender. I thought about the girl I was 15 years ago, eager, hungry, quietly fierce, and desperate for approval from people who could never truly give it. And I thought about who I'd become. Not in spite of them, but without them. I raised my glass to the sea, to the silence, to the seat I had built for myself at a table no one else designed. To the ones they forgot, I whispered. To the ones who remember themselves.